everyone, I'm Ari here with Rachel, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. This week we're on episode 241, and we're asking, what is some bad writing advice? Before we start, if you enjoy the show, consider checking out our coffee page. You can follow the page for free as we have plenty of goodies for all, or if you're feeling generous, a one-off donation will get you access to a few more treats. Or you could become a Merry Writer for just $2 a month. For this, you get access to all the items in our shop, including exclusive goodies, as well as access to monthly bonus episodes, all while helping to support our podcast. If that's not your style, but you still enjoy the podcast, then please subscribe wherever you're listening if you haven't already, and do consider dropping us a like on YouTube. It helps, it really does. Okay, let's just start off with a kind of a disclaimer kind of thing. We're not saying that all of these things are bad advice. We are saying they are bad advice if they are being spun as the main way, only method for becoming a great writer. That's what I'm saying. So please don't come at us saying, oh my God, I do that and I think it's great. If it works for you, perfect. But if it's been sent out there as this is the one true way, no, that's what we say to that. Okay, let's start with the obvious one, which I think we've talked about a lot, but I don't care. It's back on the list. You must write every day. Firstly, no, not everyone finds writing every day manageable. However, being consistent in writing is useful. So even if you only write on Sundays, or maybe you only write 3 times a week, and maybe you only manage 500 words a week or less, I'm not, making anyone feel bad if they don't manage that. It's about consistency. So work with what you have, work with what works for you, your energy level, your lifestyle, whatever comes up. If you can't do every day, don't do every day. I certainly cannot do every day. I'll have those weird pockets where I'll write every day for like 3 weeks, and then I'll stop writing for a month. And then I'll do odd bits because that's what my life is like. It's really sporadic and that works for me. And I appreciate I literally just went about being consistent. And then I came up with an example of me not being consistent. And honestly, it isn't helpful that I'm this inconsistent. And when I'm more consistent, it works better.
Well, that's the thing. You go in spurts. I do the same thing. I will get into a nice routine and I'll write every single morning. And then I just stop. One day I skip it for whatever reason. And then that immediately breaks the chain and I never get back into it, at least not for like another couple of weeks. I mean, that's the key that we're supposed to get out of you must write every single day is the consistency. If it's every day and you're able to manage that, fine, good for you. But if it's writing just 3 days a week, that's fine too. And I feel like the whole notion behind you must write every day, another common piece of advice that goes along with that is saying you should have a word count goal and you should write like 200 words a day or 500 words a day or, 5,000 words a week or something like that. And to be brutally honest, and I know Ari explained this, that it's like, if it works for you, great. But some people give out this advice as if this is the only way of doing things. When I first started writing and I looked up writing advice, because every newbie writer looks up writing advice, especially when you're 10 years old and you're trying to make it overnight because you're 10 and that's apparently how the world works. I would see that advice and I would try to write every day. And I made the goal to write 2,000 words a day because I'm a fast typer. So naturally, it's going to be super duper easy, right? No. If you try to make that goal, well, actually, this kind of goes back to the whole make your goals realistic type of thing. You don't have to write every day. You don't have to write every week. Just try to have that consistency, because if you skip a day or if you aim to write 500 words in a day and you can only manage 450, the amount of times that I have felt like crap and I have felt so guilty at the end of the day or at the end of the week by not meeting that goal, or I tell myself I'm going to write consistently Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but then something comes up on Monday, so I can't write then. And then it's Tuesday. Oh, I can't write on Tuesdays. That's not one of my writing days. But I write Wednesday, but then I skip Thursday. And then I end up writing like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I try to cram it all in just to meet my goal. It's this vicious cycle that I just don't agree with. And like, if you find the time to write a little bit every single day, then that is fabulous for you. And if that's what you want to do, then absolutely do that. But don't make it a huge priority. Don't like block off other things that have to get done just to get your writing done. If you can fit it in, fine. But otherwise, just take a look at your writing, take a look at your writing style and you yourself and what you can manage. And if that's writing every day, fine. If it's not, that's fine too. Do what works for you. I went on a rant too. This is going to be one of those ranty episodes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can feel that. I was fine with how I was writing until obviously the internet became a big thing. And I said, you Google writing advice. And it annoyed me how many people, especially as I got older, how many people would be like, if you can only write 1,000 words a day, that's fine. It's like only, it's like not everyone can do that. And if you start with saying, if you could only write and then give a larger number a day, that's going to make people who definitely can't do that feel like crap. And I found it interesting because Sir Terry Pratchett, who wrote like 1 million books and is incredible, his total was 400 words a day. This guy who was prolific, 400 words, that's all he had to do. And that's all he needed to do. So that works for him. And it's weird seeing that, learning that this guy who wrote so many books and who especially started Discworld, he was working full time and writing in his part time. He only aimed for like 400 words. It doesn't sound like much. And I've even seen people say, well, if he can do 400 words, then I'm only going to do 200 words or 50 words. And it sounds like, oh, is that all? And it's not. Because if you say, I'm only going to do 50 words, it might sound really small. I feel really bad saying that because I've just said, even that might in one sentence, because the whole thing is about starting. If you know you've only got to write a paragraph or a sentence or 50 words or 10 words, if it's manageable and you sit down and you write that, there'll be days when you can only do that and it takes a lot of energy because your just brain's not there. And then there's other days you'll write those 50 words or those paragraph or whatever, and then you'll carry on and you'll get like 6,000 out because you're on a roll. So you're right, having this kind of like locked in amount, especially if it's a large amount, and it might not seem like much, especially with like NaNoWriMo with its whole, you only have to write 1,667, I think it is, a day. And if you miss, you have to then move it to the next day. That is way too intense. And we're not all like that. So yeah, if you have to pick a writing goal, a word count, either, I said, just pick it for the week. That way you've got flexibility, but keep it small. Use it as the spark that gets you going, getting past the inertia. That's what you need it to do, not to be, well, I can write this book in this many months or weeks or whatever if I write this many words. Just put an amount to get you in the chair and to do something. That's it. That's all it needs to do, because I guarantee nine times out of 10 you'll move forward with it. But yeah, don't make your goal big. Oh my God, I hate that.
And I think that's something that we've all done at one point or another. I mean, if we're talking about me specifically, I've done that numerous times in various different ways, and I always feel like crap after. But even I agree with Ari, even if you just aim to write one sentence a day, that's totally fine. Keep a calendar and don't keep track of your word count or your chapter count or anything like that. But on the days that you write, no matter how much or how little, however you want to look at it, just like color it in green. And then you'll see it won't matter saying like, wow, I wrote 1 million words this month. You can look at that calendar and say, wow, I wrote 28 days out of the 31. That's a lot. And it really you got to think about it from a different perspective, and you need that quality over quality, but also just be kind to your brain and your mind, and like, don't keep trying to overachieve on your first draft. Like, really think about that.
Well, that's it. It's like if you go start exercising, no one's saying, well, put your running shoes on and then go and run 2 miles. It's like, no, if you've never run, you shouldn't even start with running. It's if you're not into doing anything physical, you should go out walking, consistently. Again, not even daily, just consistently. That's what you have to do. No one's expecting this. But to me, if someone says, oh yeah, if you can only write 1,000 words a day, that's like saying, okay, I know you've not done anything physical for ages, but we're going to go for a 1 mile run. First time ever. And it's like, yeah, that's going to hurt. And it's going to make you feel like crap. And you're not going to want to do it again. Unless you're those people who like that. And I'm just saying, this episode's not for you then, is it? And before we get even more ranty, we're going to move to the next point. You must write to trend. If you write to trend, you may do better and be more successful than if you don't. Because the whole point of trend is if it's trending, you're going to have more people looking for that style of writing, that story idea, and you might do well. But if you do that and you do not enjoy the trends that you're writing, and you're writing about things that you don't care about, your work will most likely suffer for it. And that will then put you down a little bit. I remember there was a time when it was like the most popular seemed to be YA. Now, obviously, a lot of people love writing YA, but there'll be people who jumped on the YA bandwagon because it was popular. Now, if it works for you and you are able to push through the the lack of enjoyment for that and still write a good book that people like, do it. But if you're literally chasing trends, writing YA, and it's not your jam, why are you doing that? Or if people say, oh, your story has to have romance, and if it's got romance, it's got to have spice. No, it doesn't. There are many writers who make a good living without these so-called staples in books. And you can write against trend and still do well. But I'm going to talk about that in a second because I've just realized I've messed it up. So if we're talking money, which obviously is important, if you're writing and you want to write as a business, you need to be passionate about it because you have to be able to maintain it. And also you got to think about the fact that chasing trends means changing frequently because it doesn't stay the same. 1 minute it could be Westerns in space. The next minute it could be contemporary romance. Then it could be YA chosen one, which I don't think we've ever got away from, have we? It's just living around now. And we move through it. There's all these like pockets of things that do really well. So you've got to be constantly changing and moving and writing different things. And you might really like that. But if you don't, consider not chasing trends.
I just want to add that what you said earlier, if you want to write to trend, actually, I forget what you said earlier, but you said success. You said the word success. And I just want to remind everybody that if you decide to write to trend, because I know it does work for many people, and if that's what you want to do, you want to write to trend, you want to write to market, then that's fine. But you got to think about your writing goals first. If your main writing goal is to make a business out of your writing, that means you probably want to make a full-time income off of it, which means, yeah, you probably should write to trend or write to market. But if you're just doing it for fun, you just want to get your work out there, or you just want to make a little extra money, but you just want to keep writing your passion and share it with the world. And if people buy it, great. If they don't, oh well. Then writing to trend isn't your option. Just write what you want. Write the stories that you want. We all have so many ideas. Don't discount them just because they're not romance, or they don't have spice, or they don't have vampires that sparkle, or they don't have anything that's currently trending. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, and again, Ari, I completely forget what exactly you said, but you mentioned the word success. And I just want to remind everybody that success does not have a definition. I know it's technically in the dictionary, but every individual has a different definition of what success means to them. So look at your writing and figure out what you need to do to make your writing successful for you. And if that's making a lot of money, then yeah, sure, go ahead, write to trend if that's what you want to do. But if it's not, then just write what you want and have fun with it.
Exactly. I mean, we mostly start out with an idea of a story. We don't usually think about, well, I want to write to do this. I mean, obviously, there's all these adverts where people are trying to get you to be a writer and then use AI. Not going to talk about that. That's a whole nother episode, and I'm just not in the right headspace for it. But just flick into this. It's like anything. You don't have to write to trends to be successful. And remember, somebody has to start the new trend. Someone has to be the outlier to kick off the next big thing. There's a reason sci-fi became big again. And things like The Martian, the book The Martian came out and did really well. We weren't in the sci-fi at different times. And then we'll move into, like I said, vampire fiction, or then maybe it'll swing into dystopian fiction, or there'll be somebody will write the next new great solo detective. We've had Sherlock Holmes, we've had Poirot, we've had Miss Marple, and there's probably a million more that I don't know of. But somebody will do that. Somebody will create something that's outside of the current trend, and then everyone will flock to it. So being outside the trend can actually work for you. Just a thought.
That's actually a really good point. I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's like how do we move from sci-fi to werewolf fiction? It's like somebody had to go, you know what? We need sexy werewolves.
Now, I know we normally tell you guys to take what we say with a grain of salt and don't listen to us because we don't know what we're talking about, but listen to Ari. When it comes to that, listen to Ari's words.
Oh, it's my fault then if anything goes wrong.
That's right. That is absolutely correct.
Also, you could still keep an eye on trends, right? I think it's actually a good idea to keep an eye on what is marketable at the moment, because first of all, you could end up seeing that what you automatically write, what you enjoy writing, is actually coming into trend, and you can really ride the coattails of it. Or there could be aspects that are doing really well that are already something you could put into your story. Or maybe you could write something separate. You could keep writing what you like, but then start another pen name and write something else. Because thinking, well, I've always wanted to try dinosaur dystopia. I'll try that because it's suddenly trending. Wouldn't it be cool if it suddenly started trending after I said this? So even if you don't want to get hooked on trends, watching out for them, keeping an eye on them, what is commercially viable, see if you can use those elements, that's not a bad idea. But the idea that you could only be a success if you follow trends like religiously, I don't think that's the best advice, personally. Okay, the next one, which I do find funny. You must use an outline and you must stick to it. And I say it's funny because I used to be a pantser, a massive discovery writer, and then I moved into to using outlines. But that does not mean that it's for everyone. Lots of writers don't use outlines and they do a great job. Some of my favorite stories, I found out the authors had no outline, and it's like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Certain stories may not need an outline. Others that are more complicated, they may work better with one. It could be a really, really basic, like just like plot points in single sentences, or it could be something 30,000 words long with full details of exactly what happens in the chapter. In the end, it is what works for you. As I said, I used to write only as a discovery writer, and honestly, I wrote loads and I finished lots of stories when I wrote like that. But as I got more complex with my stories, I needed an outline because I had to keep track of all the threads. If I had been able to do that in my head, I would have stayed a discovery writer. Seriously, I would have just written by the seat of my pants and enjoyed it. But I changed, and that happens, you know. And even with outlines, there is no one that's perfect. We've done an episode, I think, maybe two, about outlines. I'll try and remember to link it, because everyone is different, and depending on how you work and what works for you, if you do use an outline, there'll be different methods. And you might use an outline for one book and not for another book. It doesn't matter. There is no right or wrong. It's what works for you. That's all it ever comes down to.
This is another one of those pieces of writing advice that I took to heart when I was a kid and just starting how to write, because yeah, there were so many things that said you have to use an outline. And it took me far too long to realize that an outline is a guideline. It's not set in stone. You don't have to follow it to a T. 9 times out of 10, if you write an outline, your characters are going to do the opposite anyway. It's canon. It's what it is. There's no stopping it. So yeah, if the project needs an outline, like if it has too many threads, too many like timelines, plot points, whatever, then yeah, having a loose outline just to keep track of all that stuff is a great idea. Otherwise, if you just want to write your ideas down and see where it takes you, that's okay too. Again, you got to do what's best for you, and it's going to be different for every project. It's going to be different for every genre.
Perfectly said. Okay, I'm going to try and make this the last one. Don't read in your genre because you may end up plagiarizing. This is a weird one, right? Real plagiarizing is where you like completely take everything from, and you know it's kind of, you kind of know if it's real plagiarizing. If we're talking being inspired, everyone is inspired a little bit by what they read, they hear, they see, they watch. Whereas plagiarizing is a lot more different than that. I mean, there's a reason we have fairy tale retellings, or retellings about old stories that are given a new twist. Maybe this, you know, it's an old Victorian story, they turn it into a sci-fi or anything like that. You are going to get inspired. You're going to have similar elements. People can even come up with similar ideas without having read or seen or heard of anything that other person said. Same with designs or anything. It's just the thing, you know, we're very creative as you know, as humans, and it does happen. Now, if you're worried about being too influenced by other people's work, take a break from reading the same genre, or read widely to give you a bigger pool to draw inspiration from. Because again, you're not even trying to be inspired. The more you read, the more you watch, the things you talk about, your experiences, everything like that, it all goes into the well to get mushed around and come out as some ideas. This is what happens. That's why if you get burnout, you're supposed to like calm down and back away and refill the well. But yeah, I've even said where it's like, you shouldn't read your genre at all. Not about plagiarizing, but just you shouldn't read it at all, because then you'll be fresh. And it's like, again, it's so weird. I don't get that at all. The idea that you shouldn't read in your genre. In fact, some people have even said you shouldn't read too much if you want to be a writer. Yeah, I can't even say anything to that comment, because that's just, there's no words for that.
I mean, reading is the best way to learn about the industry, and you absolutely should read widely and read in like a variety of age groups and genres, whatever you're interested in, even things that you're not interested in, just so that you get a feel for, you know, pretty much everything that's out there. But yeah, you definitely do need to read in your genre, because this kind of goes along with the whole right to trend. We have genres for a reason. It's to help categorize all these different stories and narrow down the millions upon millions of books that are out there. When you read in your genre, you're learning about the genre and what readers of that genre are expecting. You can't write a cozy murder mystery and market it as such, and then when readers read it, it's super bloody and violent and gory. Like that's not a cozy mystery. And that's how you get a lot of bad reviews and 1 stars, because people are gonna accuse you of false advertising and stuff like that. And it also makes it look like you don't know what you're doing. Doesn't matter if it's a debut book or not. If you look like you don't know what you're doing, then people aren't going to pick up your work.
That is very true. I am just going to go back to the concept of plagiarizing. Yeah, the actual plagiarizing is where you take someone else's original work and pass it off as your own. You may change little bits, but it's still mostly their work. And I do remember it was quite a few years ago. There was an incident, and I'm not using anyone's name. There was a writer, I think she was self-published, indie author, and she wrote these books and they did really well. And then somebody else took her book, at least one of them, and rewrote it very, very like literally the book. And they added spice because she was a clean writer and she didn't add spice, and then passed it off as their own. That is plagiarizing, where you're taking someone's complete work and then just amending little bits. And there's like nothing original other than obviously throwing spice in. Yeah, that's bad. If you're doing that, if you're being so inspired that you're literally just copying someone's stuff 100% and barely changing it, it's like, that's bad. If you're being inspired, if you can see elements of other people's work in your work, that happens. There's a reason why people get drawn. There's a reason why someone says, oh, did you like A Court of Thorn and Roses? Well, you'll love this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because there'll be elements in there. Maybe they've got fae, maybe they've got magic, maybe they've got a world of humans and other creatures that they have to pass through a barrier. It's like, these are all aspects in lots of stories. That's not plagiarizing, unless you're like really like, well, this is going to happen in this. Like, okay, if you're ticking off every single thing and it's like almost identical, maybe that's bad. No, I mean, you can read about 6 or 7 different fairy tale retellings and they're all different. They may have aspects similar to each other because they're using similar characters, because obviously they're, maybe it's Red Riding Hood, so there's always this concept of this girl and she's in the forest or something like that, and she has red on, or maybe her name's got something to do with red, or her hair's red. It's like, yeah, I think people can use that as kind of a fear-mongering thing, like, oh my god, you might do something a little bit similar. I mean, I've read books where I'm literally reading it going, in fact, A Court of Thorn and Roses is one of the books, and I was reading it, I'm thinking, I can see a lot of elements that remind me of this book that's been out a lot longer. And I could literally that's not her plagiarizing. That's her creating and building in some way that may be a little bit similar, but it's still a completely different story, completely different characters in their own right. So yeah, I'd be aware of people saying that. It makes me wonder if they're just trying to make you fear to the point where you don't want to do any writing.
I think what you said was pretty good. I concur.
So you're probably picking up a theme with this, and that is, do what works for you. Take advice that works and let go of the rest. There is no one that fits all. If it doesn't work for you, try something new. Don't stick to what doesn't work, and also realize that you will change. What worked for you at the beginning when you started writing might not work later on. You will change, your style will change. Every year you become a little bit different experiences, insights, productivity, it'll all change. So try and avoid following random advice that's purported as this kind of the best advice ever. Try it if you want to, but if it doesn't work, don't feel bad about that. It's just not for you, and let it go. Okay, this is a really long episode. It's mine to edit, so I'm going to stop there. Before we leave, if you want to learn more about us, the podcast, and opportunities to be a guest on the show, don't forget to check out our Podbean website, which is themerrywriterpodcast.podbean.com. Now we'll turn it over to you guys. What is some bad advice that you've been given? Let us know the answers in the comments and we can have a chat about it. Remember, we release new episodes every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing how to use Scrivener. To ensure you don't miss it, hit the subscribe button on your way out. And as always, thanks for listening to the Merry Writer Podcast. We'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Stuffed Bookshelves. Our TBR piles are huge. The music, titled Inspired, is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.